What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rear Naked Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie Kilstein, and my co-host for today is...
Kristina Barlaan.
Yeah,
Me.
you nailed it. You nailed it. Guys, again, if you're not watching the video, you missed a very cute chin and hands thing. That's actually something I like to type out when someone's boring me. I'll write chin and hands, and I don't know if anyone knows what that means, but it makes me very happy.
It's like the Willy Wonka meme where he's like, "Oh, you don't say."
Yeah. Oh, all lives matter. Go on. So check it out. There's so much I want to talk to you about. We actually got some questions for you. I got a really heavy email that is going to enrage you so much that I feel like we have to split it into sections to like trash people individually to like, you know what I mean? Because I'm reading the story and I'm like, oh, okay, I got to trash that guy. And then she's like, and this is how the school responded. I'm like, well, this is a whole nother realm of emotions. I
Oh
don't know.
Lord.
So it's rough, but I think it's really important that we talk about. But first of all, before we get to all that, you went and won the pants.
I did a thing.
You did a thing. What a
I
big
did
deal.
a thing.
What a big deal. And I'm going to be totally honest. I don't think this audience is so great. I don't think anyone would call me out. But for the record, I made fun of everyone who was going to go compete at Pans. I was like, y'all going to get COVID. You're going to give your grandmas COVID. The video did very well. And then I found out you were going, and I was like, well, I want her to win, obviously. And I threw out all of my thoughts. So I want to talk about like, what was the vibe? Because so many people have been asking me my thoughts on competing, and I'm like, don't do it. But you were actually there. So this is such a good opportunity. And then I want to talk about, obviously, the competing and the winning. But first of all, like, what the fuck was the vibe? IBJJF was sketchy before COVID. What was it? What was this shit like?
Oh man. I want to say that they at least did their best, but I mean, there really was no like way to enforce any of like the rules and regulations that they said that they were going to enforce.
Okay.
Like,
great. I don't feel bad for shitting on it now, because that was the whole point of my sketch. I was just like, guys, you can't even stop ringworm. How in God's name are you gonna stop fucking COVID?
Yeah, I mean, they did well. Like when you get there, they were doing pretty well. I have no idea how the people who got in were able to get in, as far as like they were pretty clear as far as like you can't come in unless you are accompanying a competitor, and that competitor only has one companion, right?
Okay.
So you have to actually go in with the person, with like whoever you're chaperoning, whatever it is. So it's like I only went on the day that my friend Jess was and that's another story I need to tell you of this current situation.
I'm ready.
And then I went in the day that I competed. So I was only there on the 2 days, and then everything else, So when you get in there, like, or when you first get there, they're like, all right, they do the temperature check.
Okay,
they
that's
check.
good.
They're all like, are you with her? Is she with you? They're like, yeah. All right. Like, you're wearing your mask, cool. Then you get inside, and it's just lawless.
Lawless, yeah.
Lawless. Like, some people have their masks, some people don't. Like, people are just like, there's no one's enforcing it. No one's telling anyone. The most they do is they announce it over the loudspeaker, like, please help prevent, wear your mask.
Dude,
and
nobody
like,
listens.
no
one listens to announcements unless they're about acai. Oh, I was going to put these jokes. I don't think I did. I wanted to put a joke about, but I thought this was way too esoteric. So the video I did about how you're definitely going to get COVID if you go to Pans was the two jokes I wanted to put in are, if they enforced it as strictly as they enforced not being able to eat acai outside of the fucking pen. Or the other one is not being able to go down to the floor unless you're a black belt for work. Like, I remember when I went to Worlds, I wanted to go down to see my friends, and you had to be a black belt, and they had like 18 security guards to make sure you couldn't be on the floor if you didn't have a black belt. I'm like, what? Do that with COVID, you fucking assholes.
Yeah. I figured that they would do something of that sort, and that was not the case.
Well, look, I'm going to give you props because, well, first of all, so I said this on the podcast last week. I think this was before I even knew you were competing, which is my answer for should I compete this year is much different for black belts, because black belts, just like me doing stand-up, like, this is how we make our living. If you are a fucking like 2-stripe white belt and you're like, this is my year, you're just doing it for ego and maybe sit this one out and train in like as safe an environment as you can. That's my take on it. You're kind of doing the perfect thing where you went, competed, now you came back with a gold medal and you're shit talking them. I'm like, oh, that's my hero. That's the fucking move. Go get gold and then come back and be like, they did not do what they were supposed to.
No, I mean, I thought it was gonna be I thought it was gonna be strict. I mean, it seemed like they were,
No.
you know, and so there was like, you know, people who were able to get in. They're like, oh, how did you get in? They're like, oh, like, you know, like the Brazilians, like, oh, I'm Brazilian, the Brazilian connection. I'm like, all right, you know, well,
Why aren't you wearing a mask? Obrigado. What?
yeah. So it's like, so I don't know, like, I'm not surprised though, you
Yeah,
know, like, cause it's just like it's really hard to like I don't know. It's really it's really hard to tell grown ass adults what to do. It really is.
I
Like you,
know.
like
Well, and it's weird.
you know,
It's weird that like protecting people from COVID became a fucking goddamn political issue. Where if you see someone posting about like anti-mask shit, you know they're probably more conservative. And it's so bizarre to me. And by the way, not to let the left off the hook, the left is sort of known for not talking about health or not talking about jobs. And I've said this either on my podcast or this podcast, but it's like all of us should be able to care about all of these things.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all these like fucking more like conservative jujitsu guys are like the left doesn't care about pedophilia. It's like where the fuck did that come from? I'm
Yeah,
not like no, that's bad too. But I can also be like COVID is bad. Like it's so
yeah,
bizarre that nowadays you're not allowed to care about like multiple issues. You have to pick a side.
yeah. I don't understand that. It's like I can care about Black lives, and I can also not want pedophilia. I can also hate rapists,
Yeah.
and also not like white supremacy. Like
Be,
I feel like I can be, you know,
and by the way, you picked like the fucking Trinidad of easy things to hate. Like those are all very easy hateable offenses.
yeah.
Well, what's your take? Because I didn't want to. You might have a different take than me. Is what is your take for the people who aren't black belts who don't make a living off of this when it comes to competing, especially after you saw what you saw? Like, am I being kind of a dick about it?
I mean, dude, everyone's open to their opinion, and everyone also has their like their I guess their levels of comfort or what they feel is like safe for them.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm definitely not one to be like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. But in the back of my head, I'd be like, you probably shouldn't do it, but that's your life, not mine. You know,
Right.
like, you know, I feel like there's some people who I guess like they feel like it's okay for a risk. Like shit, like you have so many like young competitors who they're not living with their families or they are just kind of like that transient life of just
Yeah.
jujitsu. So it's
Well,
kind
I
of
kind
like,
of
you
count
know,
that as, let me rephrase it. When I say black belt, people who are making a living with jujitsu. So yeah, if you're a fucking Brazilian purple belt who's like sleeping like under like Andre Galval's couch and like fucking mopping mats for food, it's like yeah, you should compete because that's why
yeah,
you're
yeah.
here. But I feel like for hobbyists,
Uh,
just to have your little fucking podium pick on Facebook, it's maybe the year to like sit it out. But that's
yeah,
me. I mean, you know what I've never given? Practical advice is when I came back from doing stand-up shows, my brothers still aren't talking to me. Like
oh,
people got mad. And this was months after I quarantined like alone. Like I'm single. I'm like I isolated. And then when were the shows? I don't know. The shows were in like May, I think, or something. Oh no. I think they were in the summer. Yeah. It was like July. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna fuck it. Yeah, it was 4th of July weekend. And I went and did shows, was on planes, was whatever. And when I got home, I quarantined again,
yeah,
and like I mean I still went outside, I went for walks, I went for runs, but I waited. I don't think I did a full 2 weeks because I wasn't like in contact with anyone who had COVID, but I was like,
yeah,
all right, there's a bit of a risk here. I'm gonna chill out for a week. I'm certainly not gonna do jujitsu. And that was the way that I felt I could make my living, I could do the thing I needed to do, but then I could still come back and kind of be as cautious
yeah.
as possible.
See,
Because you
I'm
also
right now in the middle of doing the quarantine. Now, here's the shit.
yeah.
So, my friend and I, we went and competed, and like we did the whole like camp together as well, you know, like training with each other. Like I was staying with her at her house because I didn't want to put like my family at risk, you know.
Yeah, you put
And
fucking Jess's family at risk. That's what I would have done.
yeah. So it's like,
I'm just kidding.
oh my God, Jesus. And so like I didn't want to, and then same thing too, like San Jose, like HQ where I was supposed to be training, you know, like I had to close down for a little bit because the public health officials there were kind of harassing
Yeah, that's what it
HQ a
sounded
bit. Like,
like.
yeah, dude, they were like have their car outside just waiting and watching. Like, what the heck? You don't have anything else better to do? And
Guys,
and that, yeah,
fucking
like I understand like you need a job, but like this ain't it. Like
these
it's
cops
like
are
you have a
like,
committee of people, dude.
all
They're not
all
even
right,
cops.
all right, Kristina. So I can't harass black people. I can't sit outside of a jiu-jitsu school. What the fuck am I supposed to do? What do
Bro,
you
they weren't even cops. They're like regular civilians, regular ass civilians
want?
that were like hired as part of like a task force. So it's
A snitch squad.
yes. It's the freaking COVID Gestapo. Like freaking like freaking here you're doing some jujitsu over here. You're hiding some jujitsu people. Yeah, it's crazy. And so they had to like shut down. And so um my friend Jess and I were like, all right, we're gonna have to find somewhere else to train. And they were open in Sacramento, which is like, you know, in the complete opposite direction
Yep,
of
yep.
San Jose. But she lives in Vacaville, which is like, you know, 30 minutes away. So it's like, all right, cool. Well, they're open. I guess we'll train there. So like to keep my family safe, and then also to just kind of like lessen like the 2 hour commute or like the hour and a half commute, you know.
Yeah,
It's just like, all right, we'll just stay here and then we'll compete, and then when we get back, we'll quarantine for 14 days, and then that's it, you know, we'll be
that's
good.
awesome. That's great.
Yeah, well, we got back and she started feeling sick
Oh,
like 2 days after. She
no.
tested positive. I tested negative.
Oh,
I
I
am
got.
currently still negative with no symptoms at all. We're still quarantining together because she also has a roommate who's in the military,
Oh my god.
and he can't go to work either. So we all have to just quarantine together
Oh my god.
until her passes. Yeah, until her COVID passes.
Which,
And
by the way,
this is her second time going through it too, which just sucks because that means that it's her second strain. So this is the second time where I spent an extended amount of time hanging out with her. She tested positive, but I also tested negative. And it's like
whoa,
I don't understand.
your
I don't know if
good,
I have a
your goodness makes you immune.
I don't know if I'm like if I have really good immune system or if I'm just lucky.
I
I
mean,
don't know what
that's
it
the
is,
thing.
but
No,
like
nobody fucking knows. And when they claim that they know, it's like there's so many people who are like, I think I had it in January. Like I was sick around then. I might have had it. I don't know. I had a similar situation to you. Maybe it is goodness, where I went and I was with a UFC fighter, and the UFC fighter coughed and jokingly said, and we were doing a thing together, so they didn't have a mask, coughed and said, "Don't worry, it's not COVID." And we laughed and laughed. And the next day, I got a text message from the UFC fighter
no fucking
who
way.
was like, "I'm so sorry. You need to get tested.
No.
I've tested positive for COVID." And I was like, "I'm
No.
going to kill myself." And that was the first scare I had. That was the first. And I was like, "Oh, the first thing, of course, I thought, I'm like, my brothers are going to lie." And so I went and got tested and I was negative. And so I have literally got coughed on by someone who has COVID, coughed on. And I was like, I don't fucking know, man. I mean, I'm still going
Yeah.
to take precautions. That's awesome of you that you're still taking
Yeah.
precautions.
But
And
yeah.
also, it's a cool story, by the way. I will say, whenever I do something hard or shitty, it is a cool story that there was so much adversity from the gym shutting down to COVID and whatever, and that you went and you still trained hard and you fucking won, and then you quarantined. Like that's a badass thing that hopefully when this shit is all done, it'll be one of like the tales you tell the young jiu-jitsu people who are like, I don't want to train twice a day. And you're like, let me tell you about the year of COVID when I won a gold medal, you know?
It's like, so does this make me a pandemic champion?
Yes. Pandemic. I was trying to think of if I chant your name or pandemic, but yes,
A
100%.
pandemic.
You should write it on
I
Sharpie over
know.
the medal. You have to remember which one it is. So what was, um, did this have any special significance to you, or are you kind of so used to competing that it's fucking old news, or was
Oh
was getting the
no.
gold and the black kind of a big deal?
Oh man. So I Man, this is like the most nervous I've been in a really long time. Like the nerves just would not go
Interesting.
away like that. Like a week out, I'm just like heart palpitations. I'm like, fuck, why am I like,
Yeah.
because I haven't competed since, well, the last time I competed was back in February for like a small San Jose Open, but the last big tournament I did was like last year in August at Master Worlds.
Okay.
This is my first PANS title at black belt.
That's it.
Um, and then fucking, it's gonna get a little bit TMI, but then like it's just like my nerves were all over freaking place. My mental health was shit during the entire like time, but like getting prep was good. But I had to like go through like the dark periods of like the beginning part of like quarantine and like shelter in place. Back like March, April, like during spring.
Yeah.
Um, and so like mentally, I was just like, man, I was convinced. I was like, man, I shouldn't even do pants. Like I don't even think I'm gonna be like healthy enough mentally to do it. And then for whatever reason, I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. And then like when you have like things that kind of like signs that kind of just kind of happen. I got called in for jury duty on the week of my birthday, and I'm like,
Hmm.
and it wasn't even like jury duty, it was like the selection process, and I had to go in like almost every single day, including my birthday. And I'm like, fuck it. I made it all the way to like the last day where they announced like who's in and who's not, like, do you make the cut? And it had in my head, I'm like, well, if I get selected for jury duty, that means like I can't do pants because I can't train. And I'm like, that's what it is. And for whatever reason, I was like one of like the first people that was excused.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, and I know why I probably got excused. It was like it was a domestic violence case,
Yeah.
and
And you
the
were just sitting there
no,
clenching your
yeah, the
fist.
days before, I was just like, I support the Me Too movement. I am, someone who has experienced sexual assault,
Yeah.
and like, they're like, yeah, definitely like the
You're like,
defendant side was just like, we don't want her
you're like,
on the jury.
I guess what I would say is my main purpose in life is revenge. Well, how fucked up is that, by the way, that you being like, I am against rape? They were like, get her out of here. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
but that's the same with COVID, right? Where it's like you being outspoken against sexual assault should be the norm. It shouldn't
yeah,
be, oh, that puts you on the political side. I mean,
yeah,
whatever, but like public defenders, like they got to do what they got to do. But um, that's insane to me.
yeah. So,
By the
so
way,
yes. Oh, wait, sorry. Yeah, what were you saying?
well, no, I was just gonna say I knew exactly what you were gonna say. It almost felt like telepathic, where
Ooh,
I talked about on my podcast this morning about how I was supposed to go to a thing tomorrow, almost bailed. It was to train with one of my favorite professional wrestlers, which I secretly have wanted to do forever. I talked about this on the Josh Barnett's episode. And my mental health was a little shoddy this morning, and I was like, you know what, maybe I should cancel. And I gave myself, I don't know if you do this, but me and you are smart people, so you can give yourself intellectual reasons to
yeah,
be a chicken shit, where I'm like, you know what, I really should be focusing on the podcast and blah blah blah. And then I got all these fucking signs, and I said that on the podcast, like
oh
exactly what you
shit,
just said. And this is another sign, I'm racking this up, where I got
yeah,
so many signs to do it, and then just like, oh, you're just being scared. And that's why I'm knocking out 5 fucking podcasts today. I've never done it before.
yeah, dude. I saw that. I was like, dude, he's on a
Yeah, and I'm just gonna set them to
bullet.
post so I can go do the scary thing. But I mean, you got to finish your story, but I also think it's so important for you to share this, because I remember when I competed at Blue Belt, or so many people who were listening, it's so crazy because you can hear, I mean, shit, Mike Tyson talked about how he used to want to throw up before fights and thinks everyone's bigger than him and stuff like that. Speaking of domestic violence. And, but you hearing black belts and hearing people like that, it doesn't go away and you can still come out and perform, is huge, because when it is happening to you, not only are you scared, but then you feel stupid on top of it. You feel like, oh, because I'm scared, I guess I don't belong here, or I guess I'm not a fighter, or I guess, and it just adds to it, as opposed to being like, no, everybody feels that way. And that's okay. And it's part of it.
Yeah, it was just like, so I had it kind of in my head. I was like, well, I was on the fence already. Like, should I sign up? Should I not? And then again, like the intellectual part was just like, well, if you get signed on for jury duty, that I mean that's extra money.
Yeah.
Like you're
Oh,
not
yeah.
doing anything you're not doing anything right now, anyways. You know, and
$35 a day, baby. I don't know
shit.
what it is, but some.
And this was already coming off of like my actual first scare of COVID, where like I was just actually just like dehydrated and like overexposed to the sun,
Right.
and I had like a very low grade fever. Well, I was like a fever nonetheless, and I freaked out,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, I'm gonna go get tested, but like it took forever. Like it took me a week to get tested, and during that week I stayed inside.
This happened to me
And
too.
then
Yeah.
after I got tested, they're like, it's gonna take up to 2 weeks to get your results.
Yep.
And so during that 2 weeks, I stayed sequestered to my room.
Yeah.
So for 3 weeks, I was literally just either in my in the house, or like, and 2 of those 3 weeks just in my room.
Oh,
Didn't
homie,
even leave the room other than to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
Because I didn't want to put my family at risk, just in case.
Oh,
And
the
then I
same thing
finally
happened
got
to me.
it.
By the way, the same thing happened to me, and it happened to me the first week I went back to jiu-jitsu. I go, you know what? I'm gonna fucking go for it. And I found the school, and they seemed really cool, and that they were handling it well. And I was like, and I finally caved because of my mental health, where I was like, okay, COVID is bad, but realistically, I'm not really around that many people. My job allows me to quarantine, and I'm super depressed, so I'm gonna go back and train. And I went the first day, and everyone was so nice. And they're like, you know what, man, you should teach here. You're like a real, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't need the money, but like maybe giving back to the community. And I was like, looks like I found my purpose. And then the school gets a text message the next day that is like, one of our members who trained yesterday has tested positive for COVID, and
Oh,
several other members have tested positive for COVID.
no.
And I was like, bye jiu-jitsu, bye.
Oh, no.
But like,
Bye.
and I got so depressed, and I started to be like, well, maybe I shouldn't work out at all. And like, can I even host a jiu-jitsu podcast if I'm like, and like, yeah, your brain goes into fucking crazy town,
Yeah.
especially when you're quarantining.
Yeah, it was pretty shitty. It was just like I lost track of days. And then like when I was like, all right, I'm finally
Kristina.
free, I got my negative test.
Yeah.
Then I was like, shit, I have jury duty now. Like, fuck, like,
Yeah.
so like I still don't have like my actual freedom, and it was on the week of my birthday. So all this stuff, and I'm like, man, I can't even think about competing right now. Like,
Yeah.
But then when I didn't get selected, and I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I need to sign up, because I just wanted a schedule again,
Yeah.
like I wanted some sense of normalcy. Like I needed a goal. I needed something like I feel
That's
like this was
huge.
just
The
like my
goal's
mental
huge.
health,
Mhm.
I was like, dude, I need something to like wake up for. I need
Yeah.
something to feel motivated again. So like I started doing it, and like the beginning of the process, I think I was like 134 or
Yeah.
something, like in my weight, which is, for me, it doesn't look bad. Like it looks like normal for like my height, and because I have a small frame, I just look like a normal person, but that's pretty overweight for me, you
Yeah.
know? And then I started making my way down. And this is like another shit too, like with the crazy stuff with the weight. So I usually compete at 118. At Pans, I actually ended up competing at 129 instead. But like within 2.5 weeks, like I was 134, 2.5 weeks later, I was like 122.
Yeah.
Just by diet and exercise. It's like, oh shit, like the weight's coming off. It's great.
Yep.
I'm in perfect, timing to make it down to like, compete at 118 with my gi on. That means I'll probably be like at the very lowest 113 the day of the tournament, And then, I find out that like my opponents decided to move up.
Great.
Right? So one of them moved up already prior, and then so the other girl that was in the division with me, she messaged me and she's like, hey, she moved up. I just want to know, like, are you gonna move up? Are you gonna stay? Or like, and in my head I'm like, I really want to fight at 118, because that's, for me, it's just kind of like, well, it's Pans, it's a big tournament. I have this healthy mindset of like, I'm determined to get down to like this weight, because it's kind of like you're a little ritual, like,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel quite right unless you actually, work your way down. Like I don't want it to be super easy. It wasn't like I was struggling, but like something does with the mindset when you have like that extra little challenge, right?
Yep.
Kind of gives it the respect. And so I told her, like, well, like I want to fight at 118, but if you happen to like want to move, I'll end up moving too, because obviously I won't have anyone to fight at 118, like I'll just have to go where everybody is.
Yeah.
And then like a week later, the girl who moved up to 129 messaged me, and she's like, hey, do you want to just skip the whole like, weight cut diet thing, and then we just all fight at 129? And I'm like, well, the other girl messaged me last week, and she said like she wants to do 118 and I want to do 118.
This
So
is a
unless she
fucking
moves,
nightmare.
yeah, I was like, so unless she moves, like I'm not gonna go anywhere. She's like, oh, I totally get it. So then she messaged the other girl, and then the other girl
This would
like,
be a very
convinced her to move up, and then
this
she
would be a
messaged me.
it would be a very boring episode of like UFC Countdown, you know, when they're hyping the fights, like bad blood, and it's just you guys DMing each other for like fucking 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you want to, and so she convinced her to move up to 129. I'm like, well, I guess I have to move to 129.
Oh
And
my
I'm
God.
like, man, I was like already, making my way down, making my way downtown, walking around, faces past,
Thank you. I would have let you do the whole song.
yeah.
That's why I was
So
being quiet. I was like, how far will this bit go?
it's gonna go a long time. And then a part of me was a little annoyed because it's like, man, I had like the mindset, I'm gonna make it down, I'm gonna compete at 118.
Yeah.
So plans change, and that for me, like, again, when you have your rituals, when you wake it down, when you're prepping for something, it's kind of like you want things to be a certain way.
Yeah.
At least, especially when you have mental illness, like, if one thing goes wrong, sometimes it's like, I'll forget that's at the end of the world.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lose, it's gonna be a terrible time. And so I just had to like kind of like manage that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, here's the plus side. I get to, eat more. I can add more to my calories, like more
Yeah.
carbs. I ended up losing more weight as opposed to gaining the weight. I don't fucking know how. The day of the tournament, I was 122 with my gi on, which
Whoa.
means that like without my gi, I was like 118, 119.
Yeah.
And then to fucking top this all fucking off, sorry, language, I
Yeah.
got my fucking period the day I competed.
Perfect.
And
I
I'm
was
like,
waiting for
this
that.
fucking sucks.
It's
Like,
great. It's
but the
fucking
thing is,
great.
it didn't start in the beginning of the day where I could like prep myself and make sure that I'm not wearing a fucking white gi, which I only packed white gi anyways. But I would
Right.
have
Yeah.
had extra coverage.
Man.
No, it fucking starts when I'm fighting. So it's like in photos, it's in videos, and I'm
No,
like,
I didn't see that.
fuck,
Oh, it's amazing. You
fuck.
you should change your fight name to Period Rage is my
Oh
idea.
Lord. And here's the shit. There was a moment when I was sitting in the bleachers before going down to weigh in and everything. And like I already knew, I was like, my period's gonna come this week. And in my head, in my back of my lizard brain's like, it's gonna be today. And it's probably gonna happen when you're fighting.
You
And so I
manifested it.
I was already preparing
Yeah.
the conversation in my head with people like, oh, she was spotting, she has started her period. And I'm like, you know what? It's natural to bleed. Like I was
Yeah. Oh
already
yeah.
like
You
imagining the
had your
conversations I had to have with people about having my period while competing. And like I am gonna tell you, like I was already nervous as shit. Like they weren't going away. Like the breathing was just off the fucking charts. And then I didn't have, this is the first time I ever felt it where I didn't have strength in my arms.
right.
So like I'm like trying to fight and like I'm doing the things, but like my hands are not doing the things. Like they're
Whoa.
just barely doing the things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this sucks.
But you
And
won.
somehow I fucking
You
won. And
won.
I'm like, fuck. I don't know if that was just like, man, I just believe in my technique, or like I don't know. But I
You
had a
just
lot
were.
just
I
going
mean,
in me that I was just like, fuck,
dude,
this sucky.
I talked about this on my podcast today, which is you are where you're supposed to be. No matter what's happening, where you're listening to this, when things are bad, it's where you're supposed to be. When things are good, it's where you're supposed to be. And for all you know, look, you could have just won because you won. Maybe you won because of all that shit, because there was so much crazy shit going on that you couldn't overanalyze your game, that because you couldn't feel your hands, it's like training tired and you were more technical. Maybe you won because you had a kind of fuck it attitude and you go, I can't get worse, and you didn't have all this pressure on yourself. Like, you never know. But so many times when we look back at these shitty things that happen to us, we can also trace like, oh, that's why I became, I mean, shit, like this is a weird example, but I was crying about my cat again today on the podcast. But like, that's why I went back to being vegetarian when I lost him. And like that to me, and again, this isn't like preachy, but for me, I just feel like that's who I'm supposed to be, whether it was past life shit, whether it's just because I love animals so much, like whatever. Ever since going back to being vegetarian, it's actually really helped my mental health, which is
Yeah.
crazy. And I'm not saying because of the diet, I'm just saying because it's like I am aligned with the things I care about or whatever. But like that came out of the worst thing that's happened to me, which is
Yeah.
like losing Talib, right? Or like, this is the first year I've been single. If I wanted to, the narrative of, oh, I'm a sad fucking single guy, I'm 38, I'm by myself, it's during COVID, that narrative would have been so easy. And there have been a couple times, I mean, but only a handful, that I've started to play that and I got a little sad and I caught myself. But because of that, It's why I started waking up at 5. It's why I started meditating. It's why I started this pod. I mean, so much good has happened from that if I do end up in a relationship, it's gonna be fucking great because I
Yeah.
know what I want for the first time in my life. And so all of those bad things, like maybe it did lead to you fucking winning. And even if it didn't, you now get to, the next time there's a shitstorm, you get to draw on that and go, dude, I fucking won a gold medal on my period in this COVID scare with like this weird training, having to move up a weight. And you can use that to be like, I got out of the storm. I will get out of this storm.
Yeah, you know, like I 100% believe like in the best way possible, I am the product of my worst days.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. I love that.
like like the whole accumulation of all the bad days I've ever had, like
Yeah.
something good has come out of it. I mean, shit, bad days were fucking shitty though. I mean, like there is some traumatic, terrible shit that I do not wish upon
Of
anybody.
course.
But like, you know, but like that was shit, but you know, that was like all out of my control, you know?
Yeah.
And so like, man, like in this day and age, like I understand like there's a lot of shit I can't control. There's a
Yep.
shitload of stuff I can't control, but I can definitely control how like I react to it or how I respond to it. Or
Yep.
you know, I can choose to like, okay, well, this is what I'm being given. And these are the pathways I can go about, you know?
Yeah.
So like I was definitely at peace. Like, man, like all this stuff is happening. But like, man, I had to say I definitely had some incredible like mental resolve. It's just like, well, like having the conversation in my head, like, well, if I end up having my period while I'm fighting and people see, it's like, you know, it's one, it's not like I meant to do it, and two, it's like it's nothing to be embarrassed about. That's
Oh,
just
I
nature,
think that makes the
you know.
story.
Like,
I think all of this makes the story so much more badass. It's like, and you still fucking won. Like, oh, it's so good. It's such a fucking great story.
just like I kind of went in. I'm like, if I bleed, I bleed.
Yeah.
Like,
See, how badass is that? That was your mantra before winning the gold medal at Pans was, if I bleed, I bleed. Oh, they don't know you're talking about your period. It could sound like battle scars. Oh, that's the best. That I'm gonna start saying that before I fight. If I bleed, I bleed.
if I bleed, I bleed. I
Um,
was like, fuck it.
I want to say before I read this email for us, you know what, there were a couple questions, but this one's the most important, so I just want to focus on this.
Yeah.
But before I get to it, I just want to say one mental health thing that I do, and I don't want to put this on you, so I'm going to say for me specifically, is, and meditation's helped, is when I start to go, I'm fucking depressed, and I say that out loud, I start to feel more depressed, and it's not fun. And I start to think I am my illness, right? I am this. And what I've started doing is, because of meditation, I can pause and be like, why do I feel this? And then if I was in your shoes, I'd be like, well, my gym got shut down. I'm afraid of COVID. I have to do this. I'm training for this. I had to go to jury duty on my fucking birthday. And I go, oh, okay, those are just like really shitty things that happened, which is probably one of the reasons I feel this way. So like, I'm still going to take care of myself. I'm still going to recognize and honor these feelings. But for me, when I start to really spiral is when I just go, I guess I'm going to be this way forever, or I guess I'm this sad thing forever. And so when I can, like, even sometimes it's just little things where I'm like, oh, I just didn't sleep well last night. And then I go, all right, I'm going to cross this off my schedule and I'm going to take a nap. And then I go, okay, I feel better, whatever. And obviously I'm not talking about, you know, our biology and stuff like that when it comes to mental illness, that you can just beat it with, you know, good thoughts, but you can at the very least chip away at some of that circumstantial stuff, feel a little less broken, and then go, what can I do to make this feel better? Sometimes it's working out, sometimes it's chilling out, sometimes it's getting sleep, sometimes it's just recognizing that you had a fucking shit hand dealt to you that week. And then you go, yeah, of course that's why I feel this way. Cool. Figure it out. Next week that shit's not there. Magically you feel better, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Like I've been able to be a little bit more logical about my mental illness,
Yeah.
especially with depression. Sometimes with anxiety, sometimes it's like that's like a little wild card. I don't know when,
dude,
or how it's going to hit with my anxiety.
It's a total wild card. It's definitely the friend that comes to the party and like kicks down the door and falls through a table. It's like, we're fucking doing this, and you're like,
Yeah.
where'd you come from?
Yeah, I'll be driving and you're like, we're panicking now. I'm like, but why? Like, I said, we're panicking now. I'm
Yep,
like,
yep,
fuck, all right,
yep,
shit.
yep.
But with depression, at least I can kind of like trigger, like, I know the difference between when it's like, okay, is this mental depression or is this physical depression? Because
Yeah.
like physical depression is like the things like, man, I can't exercise because of an injury or lack of sleep. Lack of sleep is like a surefire way to like set off your really just throw your mental health out the fucking window.
Yeah.
You know, like during the time that I was in quarantine, um, and I didn't, you know, I was just sequestered to my room. That was the shittiest. Like I had no concept of time. You know, I was sleeping at like 5 in the morning or seven
Yeah.
in the morning or like 9 in the morning, you know.
Do you ever
And then
do
it was shitty. And like I was like, I know that this depression isn't my head.
Yeah.
I know this is just all fucking happening because it's spiraling because physically I can't regulate myself right now.
Yes. Yes.
You
And
know?
that's so huge. Actually, so anxiety was the wild card for me. And I've even had posts probably within the last couple of weeks where I'm like, oh, here it is. Um, my little thing that I've started doing is they say that physiologically 6 deep breaths will chill you out a little bit or change your state. So when I can do those deep breaths and the heart palpitations chill out a little bit, a lot of times for me, the anxiety, if I really trace it, is like a caffeine thing or even a diet thing or just something I didn't even notice that I was stressing out about. And
Yeah.
I go, why am I feeling this? Like I'm driving, like you said. And then I go, oh, that thing I was like kind of trying to push away is still in the subconscious a little bit. But those like 6 deep breaths or something, sometimes it's exercise, something to kind of just change your state so you just stop feeling it. Because when you're in it, it's like, it's
Yeah.
fucking crazy.
Yeah.
It literally takes over your body.
It does.
Okay, so let's move on
Okay.
to the much tamer topic of sexual assault. So guys, we're gonna chill things out for mental illness.
Mm.
Um, this is such a banana story. So I'm gonna let you field a lot of this. I was so outraged that I sent her like a bazillion voice memos and already responded partially to her.
Oh.
We've never met, I don't know her. But um, I don't know how we're gonna do this yet. I think we're gonna break it into segments. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So, and this actually came from after she found out you were going to be on, which is really cool because you have been, well, I'll just read. I didn't want to write this as a public comment. I've heard Kristina talk about vulnerability and previous sexual assault, and I'm not sure if this is too heavy a topic for your podcast, but here goes nothing. A few months ago, I was repeatedly groped by a guy at my jiu-jitsu academy, and I worked up the nerve to tell my coach. So, Kristina, if you're not watching the video, jaw already dropped. Already you're in the right person who wrote this. We should give her let's give her a fake name. Inappropriate. Okay, here we go. So I worked up the nerve to tell my coach about it instead of just quitting or just internalizing everything and pretending it didn't happen. Already, let's start here. um you should never feel well, no, what's your first response to just already like you're so groped repeatedly by a fucking dude, um and the fact that her first response understandably is like, do I quit? Do I like That's how traumatizing shit like this is.
Yeah.
um and actually I'll do the here I can do the for the fucking guys listening who are like, yeah, but jujitsu, there is a fucking difference between I have a seatbelt on a girl and like am trying desperately to get in between the boobs and like, or like someone like I've had my dick grabbed and stuff like that. There people Girls are not fucking dumb. And there is a huge difference between shit gets brushed up against each other because you're wrestling and a dude grabbing you. And I just
Yeah.
want to say that because I've seen a lot of like gross kind of like naysayers of like, it's jujitsu. It's like there's a fucking difference. And
Yeah.
the guy who's doing it knows the fucking difference. And the woman that it's happening to knows the fucking difference. Period.
Yeah. 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 And like here's like the things like her, you know, like the thing that her first thought was like, do I quit? And it's like, fuck,
I
you
know.
know? And because it's like more often than not, Like, and I can speak this from experience too. Is just like like when you are groped, when you are molested, you're sexually assaulted, especially like non-penetrative way, right?
Yeah.
It's just like someone's like touching you inappropriately. The first thought that comes into our head is like, well, we don't want to say anything because we don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, or we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or we
Right.
don't want to like, you know, maybe I just misunderstood. Like it's so much easier to blame ourselves
Yeah.
than to accuse other people, because to accuse other people is to make other people uncomfortable. And socially, women shouldn't do that. Women, like from a very young age, we were taught not
It's
to
huge.
make other people uncomfortable.
Well,
We are
you're a
taught that
bitch, right?
yeah, we
If you
are
do it.
taught that we need to be we need to suffer uncomfortability for the sake of others.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know
If a guy,
what?
I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, there's a lot of like obvious territory that we're going to cover with this specific incident, but that's kind of a broader thing that I've never talked about on this show, that we've never talked about on the show, which is, yeah, you're right. Like if a man is assertive, it's badass, right? But if a woman
Yeah,
does it, she's a bitch, and you're supposed to be kind of docile, and you're not supposed
yeah,
to like ruffle feathers. And what's a bummer is a lot of women get into jiu-jitsu to kind of overcome that shit. And so when they have to deal with the same, by the way, this story gets
worse.
so much worse.
Oh my
Okay. Uh, she's okay and everything, but like
God. Okay,
the reaction from the gym, I should say.
okay,
Um, okay. So tells the coach, doesn't quit, doesn't internalizing. Great. She's being a badass. Sucks she had to go through it, but she's being a badass. I just
okay.
want to, and by the way, this is crazy. She wasn't even like, fucking kick this guy out. She was just like, keep this dude away from me. I don't want to roll.
Okay, yeah,
Right. So like low bar. So she goes, I just want my coach to keep him away from me. Coach asked me if I wanted to have him kicked out. And then she said, yeah, but it's your place of business and therefore your call. And she said, I was still pretty new and afraid to rock the boat. Dude, I get it. Like,
yeah,
that I get it. Coach spoke to the guy who then threatened to sue everyone for defamation. Clearly, I don't care about it as I read this on a podcast. Next thing, I'm being called into multiple meetings every day with the coaches and managers, and I'm being okay. This next part, I'm going to rage on. I want your response to that, if okay with you, if you're comfortable with talking about it, because this is something that I have obviously no experience with. And I think is another reason why women outside of jujitsu don't report sexual assault, because suddenly, like, look, I believe in a fair trial, obviously, but the fact that in this situation, this girl, she gets a new part-time job of having to talk about this horrible fucking incident. Is that even an appropriate move, Kristina?
yeah.
Like to be
Like
dragged into meeting after meeting after meeting just to be like, I don't want to be groped?
yeah, and now her integrity is being questioned.
Yes.
Like what does she have to gain from this other than like I just don't want to be violated anymore?
I don't
You
want to be
know?
right.
Yeah, she's not.
Right.
She doesn't. Yeah, I just don't want to be groped. I'm not asking for money.
She's not
I
asking
didn't
for
even.
right.
I didn't even ask for the guy to be kicked out. I just don't want to be groped. How
Fucking
like
these needy
you know?
women always asking not to be sexually assaulted by strangers at
Like,
jiu-jitsu. Ugh, they keep taking and taking.
what in the fucking hell?
Well,
Like,
and the meetings just seem like a nightmare, man. I mean, I had to have a meeting because I wasn't getting along with someone, and I was just like, it made me want to quit. Let alone if that guy was like grabbing me, then I'd be like, I don't want to relive this every day. And again, look, I mean, what I will say, and I hope this doesn't get me in trouble, but it's like, it is what it is. I've heard guys completely dismiss Me Too because of the believe all women phrasing, because all it takes is, they had one crazy ex-girlfriend who fucking lied about them, or I've had shit said about me that's not true. And
yeah,
you wanna, the problem is, you don't then use your fucking crazy ex or whatever as an excuse to completely dismiss a movement which is rightfully saying that so many women don't get justice for being violated for sexual assault, and so on. To but in this case, it's like it's not like a believe all women thing. It's like, this dude grabbed me, I don't want to fucking roll with this fucking dude. So anyway, okay, so I'm gonna
yeah,
keep. So it gets
yeah.
again gets crazier. Um, so she's getting fucking dragged in. This is the line that I raged on. in her voice memo, and here we go. I'll feed it to you.
Okay.
The managers and coaches are telling her that this guy has a beautiful wife, kids, and an amazing career, and this could ruin his life. Not bringing the guy in and being like, hey, you have a beautiful wife and kids, stop groping people. But by talking about this, could ruin this guy's life. Because Kristina, as you know, you can't be a fucking molester if you have a beautiful wife and children. Guys,
Oh,
all of that wasn't, I let the silence marinate. That wasn't Zoom crapping out. That was so many different expressions. She has her fist against her forehead right now. Her eyes have been closed quite some seconds. This is something that isn't that uncommon to hear though.
no, it's not, and that's
With,
the fucking part that's so fucking infuriating. Like, so what if he's married, has a beautiful wife, has kids,
yeah,
whatever?
if
Like,
she was an ugly wife, by the way,
yeah.
then it would make sense.
So it would be okay
Then
if
grope
he was,
away.
yeah. It would be okay if he wasn't married and didn't have kids,
Yeah,
like
she's a hottie, so he can
yeah.
grope.
Or wouldn't like it wouldn't matter if he didn't have a reputation, if he was just kind of like a regular old just like guy who just works
Well, this actually
what
kind of goes
what
to
the fuck?
this goes to the narrative about how, I mean, I don't think a lot of people know that the majority of sexual assault happens from people that the woman knows. And I think that when guys talk about, when people say rape culture isn't real or whatever, the image of a rapist that people like to portray is the creepy guy in an alley, usually not a white guy with a wonderful career, who grabs a random woman and does that. When in reality, it's like, nah, dude, like you can have fucking kids and a wife and a fucking cool job. In fact, if you've got some high powered job and you're always threatening to sue people, you probably haven't been fucking held accountable your whole goddamn life.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
makes fucking more sense that
yeah,
you'd be this entitled little shithead.
yeah. Like I like him having a wife, having kids, his whatever good reputation, like has nothing to do with the fact that like someone clearly feels uncomfortable with their interaction with you and in multiple occasions felt like they were taken advantage of or groped by you.
Yes.
So all the other stuff doesn't matter. Are they going to mention that, like, like I don't know who she is, but like what if we said things like, oh, she's an outstanding student and she does community service and all this, like, and this could ruin her reputation by having someone taking advantage of, like what the fuck,
I
like
know.
why
I
are
know.
you going to villainize the victim?
Yeah.
Like she's a bad person for saying I don't want to be fucking sexually assaulted.
Yeah, it's insane. This is where it gets
Ah,
like cuckoo bananas. And I mean, you can respond if you have anything, but it's just fucking horrifying. They checked the CCTV footage, which was mysteriously blank for the 2 to 3 hour period which the incident took place. Then they kept insinuating that if it was unwanted, I should have used jujitsu against him and stopped it from happening. This school shouldn't be a school. Just
what?
I'm gonna throw that out there. It's like that's so we teach you jujitsu for when you get sexually assaulted in our jujitsu class. That should be the school's fucking mantra. And then this is when I started responding to this woman because I felt so bad. She just started apologizing for this story, and it's just like, the fact that she felt like she had to apologize for this for this horrible thing she went through. So then they all tried to pressure me into having a closed door meeting with him to straighten things out. I flat out refused because looking at him gave me anxiety. I totally understand that. I'm sure Kristina, you're in
Yeah,
the same boat. Um,
yeah,
we all went on training as usual, and I just tried to keep my distance from him. Okay, so nothing happens. They don't do anything. They don't remove him. She just deals with it. Now we're going to move from this fucking creep to the gym, and I want your response on this. I'll shut up. A month later, my coach approaches me saying I'm looking way too depressed, and people have noticed that I just stare into thin air, right? and that it's bringing everyone down. The person, again, I won't use your name. I implore you to watch the video of this instead of the podcast so you can see Kristina's heart and face is very much with you on this. Um, so then this woman apologizes for bringing the negative energy into
Oh
training,
my God,
starts
no.
seeing a therapist on her own, which if that helps you, cool, and starts being as sunshiny as possible. For some reason, this irritates my coach. He stops talking to me, stops shaking my hand. I don't even know what happened. This happened for 2 months. Halfway through, he took me aside and says he doesn't know if he's capable of coaching me to meet my goals, which makes no sense. Long story short, she gets kicked out of the fucking gym.
What the fuck?
Yeah. She goes, I asked if I did anything wrong. And he said, you just need to be somewhere better, that I supposedly didn't fit in, which the entire team fought him on later, apparently. And then this is the part where I was just too fucking heartbroken. And then this is the end. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just kept my mouth shut and dealt with it so I'd still have a place to train and teammates. Most of the time I think, fuck, that I deserve better. The end. 2020 has been a bitch, but I'm still standing. And that's that.
What in the actual fuck?
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that this happened. It's infuriating that this happened. And it's heartbreaking that because of how fucking insane it is at every step of the way, this gym did nothing correct.
No.
That it would end with her being like, maybe I should have just dealt with this.
No. Yeah, like maybe I should just suffer on my own or just like, and let the fucking
Right.
assault continue. Like,
Right.
let it continue. Like,
Right. And this is a microcosm of the
ugh.
bigger of why sexual assault doesn't get reported. It's like, look who got punished for it. And this happens a
Yeah.
lot.
Who got punished, who got ostracized, who got
Yep.
isolated,
Yep.
who was made to feel guilty, like who was like traumatized and hurt. Like, it wasn't the person who fucking did the fucking assaulting.
No, that
It
guy's
was a
still,
no.
yeah.
He's still training. He's still
He
fine.
still have his
He's still
two
his beautiful
beautiful
wife.
little shitty
Yeah,
kids who are gonna,
his beautiful family with his reputation intact. Like,
yeah. I mean, what I told her, one of the things I told her was how lucky she is to get the fuck out of that school by
yeah,
horrible circumstances.
yeah,
But like the whole like, oh, I'm gonna miss. No, fuck them. Nobody should be training at a place like that.
no,
Like,
no.
and if it didn't
Were there
come out
other women training there? Like, that's what I'm just like fucking like. How is it possible for them to have like,
right,
yeah,
and and look, maybe this coat. I mean, my guess, what happened is this guy knew he handled it wrong every step of the way. Knew he was more afraid of being sued than doing the right thing. And very deep subconsciously was blaming himself. And every time he saw her, it was a reminder of what a coward he is and was looking for any excuse to stop feeling this way. And it has nothing to do with her.
no,
Especially with, I mean, the team having her back is just more evidence to that. And it was just every time he saw her looking depressed, it reminded him that he's a fucking coward, period.
Yeah, that he failed her. He failed her.
As a teacher, as a coach, as a human, as a man, he failed.
You failed your fucking student. You failed someone who trusted you to lead them to a better life or to lead them to be a better version of themselves, or someone who trusted you. Someone who literally trusted you, like, hey, you're gonna teach me this art that's supposed to empower me, and it's gonna give me all these great benefits. Like, I'm trusting you,
Yeah.
and fuck, he just turned his back. Like,
yeah. So what's your advice for her moving forward, either mentally or I mean, dude, the fact that she wants to, I mean, I sprained my thumb as a white belt and I was like, yes, I quit jujitsu. Like, the fact that she's like such a badass that she's still like, oh, I'm going to fucking train. And like, she was going back to that gym. She is so fucking awesome. But yeah, what is your advice kind of moving forward?
one, if you
or
feel,
just mentally, like
yeah, you know, shit, like if she found like fulfillment and she felt like she was on the right path doing jujitsu, like outside of like, you know, the sexual assault and like fucking that stupid shit, like just a sport for itself, and she's like, man, I feel like this could really, you know, bring something good, like good out of me, like fuck yeah, keep doing jujitsu, you know, like, you know, definitely find the school that's like in line with your beliefs and who, like, you know, if you can find a place that has a women's program, fuck yeah, do that. Now
oh yeah,
mentally it's like now here's the work. It's like you did nothing fucking wrong. Nothing wrong. Like you like you like blameless. Like you literally, it's just like you did nothing wrong in speaking out. You did nothing wrong in all of it. Like, and you came out of this with like all this shitty stuff happened, but like yeah, you're fucking badass for like still want to
yeah,
go through. um and two, it's just like, man, like yeah, you are worthy of fucking respect and you're worthy of your word, and like you shouldn't have to prove yourself or have to like, you know, denigrate yourself in order to make other people feel comfortable. You shouldn't have to make yourself feel smaller. Like
yeah.
fucking
No, it's great.
ugh.
Um,
Yeah, if there's any like trauma or anxiety that she's feeling with that, like definitely, you know, if she is still seeing a therapist, that's great, you know, but don't do that because you need to make other people feel comfortable. Do that so that
yes,
you can have your healing, you
such a
know.
great point. I didn't even think to say that because I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
your therapy is right, but like, yeah, if you're not doing it for you, it's not gonna fucking work anyway.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
like
Do
do
the
the
therapy so that it helps you, you know, so you can sleep at night, so that you can go to training, so that
well,
you
and
can know that you are right, you know,
yeah,
like
I think she just needed people along the way, and her coach would have been great, not some fucking weirdo comedian on Instagram. Like she needed people along the way to fucking have her back and be like, you are so right every fucking step of this.
yeah,
There was another thing that I wanted to say because I was shocked when she told me this. And where she was like, I feel bad, like I don't know how I'm gonna find another gym, like if I should disclose this. And it's like, I think people forget because we talk about jujitsu as an art and as a family and whatever. You're
yeah,
still a customer, homie. Like if you
yeah,
go up to a new gym, you don't need to be like, you don't have to tell them shit. You just sign a fucking waiver and you do jujitsu. Like the fact that you'd have to like relive that drama or whatever. Now,
yeah,
if you get a good vibe and you're like, hey, I've had weird experiences in the past, I'd like to train with just like women, then I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, any good school would be like, cool, we'll put you with the women first, we'll see how you feel,
yeah,
whatever. But like the fact that I think that that's still coming from a place of shame, thinking, oh, even other gyms won't want me because I started drama. And it's like, you didn't start drama.
no.
You did what you should have done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, have you you know this case with Stevie, young girl, she's like 17 years old.
Yeah.
She just posted like a few weeks ago where she finally got she was from a young age, from age, so it was like 13 to 15, I believe. So she was raped by her professor.
Oh,
And he and just recently he was like, they found him guilty. He went to
whoa.
jail. He's gonna be deported back to Brazil.
Whoa.
Yeah, the whole
I didn't
thing.
hear this.
Yeah,
Did
and
he
so
just ban women from training? Like,
what happened was like, so that whole shit was happening, right? It was, he was just very, very abusive to her,
yeah.
like controlling, like he had control of like her social media accounts, her phone, like everything, regulated everything with her.
Whoa. That's like
Yeah,
cult shit.
yeah. I'll send you the link in the story about it, and
Okay.
you can see her, because she was able to testify in court. So you can see her whole testimony.
I'm glad you warned me because every time you send me a story, it's about like dogs or cats or animals,
Yeah, all the
and
feel
I would
good
have been like,
stuff.
"Yay!" Click. Ugh.
Yeah. So and what's crazy is like, I trained with her once, and I actually trained with her when she was at her professor's gym. So I was there like during the time that was happening, like even met her mom, you know. And so, you know, um so she left because all this shit was happening, right?
Yeah.
And she was just like, man, this sucks. It's like, I fucking love jujitsu. But like now she was kind of like blackballed at other schools too, because they're just like, oh well, we don't want to bring in this young girl soon because she's going to accuse accused us of sexual assault. I was like, dude, she won't accuse of sexual assault for as long as you don't sexually
How
assault
about you
her,
don't sexually
you know?
assault her? Yeah, this
Yeah,
is insane.
and so like, and she was doing so well, but like, yeah, she was just kind of taken out of jujitsu because of all this bad thing, but she finally got her justice, she finally,
Right.
the guy, I mean, I feel like it's still too light of a sentence, but like 3 years in prison, he got sentenced to 3 years, and then he's going to be deported.
Yeah.
But like, you got to imagine, like, during that 2 year period of all like the court proceedings, like, she's a teenager going through this,
I can't. Yeah.
she
Can't
was
imagine.
sexually assaulted at 13 by her professor, and then emotionally, physically, mentally abused by him during this time too,
Jesus.
because he just totally completely manipulated her. And yeah, and then like, and with her, with all this terrible shit that happened to her, and then being like blackballed in the jiu-jitsu community as far as like new places to train, or like having the anxiety, having the trauma, like having, like, not being able to enjoy this beautiful art that had made her feel so empowered
Mm.
during a very, very vulnerable time in her life. Like, her
Yeah.
parents had just recently divorced, and it was just her and her mom,
I mean, just being
and
a
like,
fucking kid is
yeah,
vulnerable.
yeah, like her childhood was literally just fucking robbed from her. And
Ugh.
it's just like, fuck, like, man, she's I'm so glad she spoke out. I'm so glad she
Me
fucking
too.
got her justice. But like, the fucking 2 years for her to get that,
Yeah.
during that entire time, people were saying that she's a fucking liar and saying that she's just, you know, like,
And I want to end on this, which is like this whole don't bring politics into jiu-jitsu. It's rape, racism. These aren't political issues. These aren't
no,
Democrat issues. These aren't Republican issues. These are things that we should all be standing up for. And I think one of the things that's been so disheartening for a lot of people in the community to see so much racist shit or sexist shit or whatever is that, you know, I think a lot of us got into jujitsu because we kind of thought this place was better, and that it's people who want to defend other people or who want to get confident. And it is a fucking art. It's an
yeah,
art. And that's why it's just some of these reactions and it's just been so gutting. And like, look,
yeah,
I'm not wokey McWoke like I used to be. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be that way, but it's still pretty fucking easy to call out racism, to defend women who are assaulted. Like, that's not a woke thing. It's not a liberal thing. It's just like, again, it's a decent human being thing. And
yeah,
if
exactly. I was literally gonna say the same thing. It's like
yeah,
decent
and if
human
you want to
being.
call yourself, I mean, I'll speak to the guys too, like who have said like sexist or racist stuff. You want to talk about how much of a fucking man you are and like how alpha you are, and like, see, maybe this will upset some woke people because I'm talking about gender norms, but specifically for these people, it's like a man sticks up for what's fucking right. You know what I mean? So don't act like you're a fucking tough guy, but you're gonna be a complete fucking coward when a woman is assaulted at your gym, or a complete fucking coward when someone is murdered by the police. All these people who think they're so fucking counterculture, yet immediately salute for the fucking state when the state's murdering people that don't look like them. It's like, you're not a fucking man at all.
Yeah,
You're a chicken shit. Period. 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 Period.
yeah. It was like so I posted it like last week or something like that, and it was kind of like along the lines of just like, like, do you have all these guys who's just like, man, I would fuck up a rapist, Be like, yeah, you get that guy in the same room with me, I'm gonna fuck him up, beat him up. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's some cool, like, alpha male shit, but like, that's not what we're asking you to do. Anyone can beat up a person who's done something wrong, but what we'd like you to do is, if you see your fucking homeboys talking rapey shit,
Yeah.
or your homeboys talking about, like, dude, you should be, like, that's wrong. If you're not calling out your friends or your families when they're saying stuff that's like clearly like, hey man, that's like sexual assault, like,
Yeah.
that's not cool, and stand firm with it, they're gonna be like, oh man, I was just joking. I'm like, yeah, that's not funny,
He's like,
that's
but
not a joke,
I have
you know
I have a beautiful wife and 2 kids.
Yeah, fuck.
Eh,
So yeah, I'm not like that. I'm not sexist. I love women. Like, I was just making a joke. I'm like, well, it's not really funny.
yeah.
If you gotta think about the other person. It's like,
And
you
and
know,
ag- and, and again, just to beat defensive guys to the punch, it's like there are couples who have fallen in love doing jujitsu. There are women who will be attracted to men. There are men who will be attracted to women. That's not what we're saying. There's a difference between that And even this, like, oh, I'm gonna roll with her, like saying it in a creepy way. It's like jujitsu should be fucking jujitsu. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's a difference between, you know, normal shit and like rapey shit, like you were saying. Like the people,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like we've all heard comments that are like gross.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
like, yeah. And so it's not that hard to do. I don't think so. Well, maybe it
Well,
is hard to do. Maybe it is. Maybe the social constructs are really hard for people. Like, they want to be accepted, they want to be liked, but like, man, at what cost?
yeah.
Like,
I remember I trained with uh who's that fucking guy? Oceander. And I did a private with him way back in the day, and he dropped a hard F bomb. And the homophobic one. And I was,
oh,
and like I'm taking a private. He's huge and scary and much bigger jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, there are ways to do it. And I remember just going, I don't think we say that anymore. And
yeah,
he laughed. And like, look, I don't know if that fucking, was like a
yeah,
life-changing moment for him. I just remembered it.
yeah,
But it was a way that I'm like, one little chip, it
yeah,
was like one
yeah,
little chip just to be like, oh, we don't do that.
yeah.
Like,
Like,
I
and
felt,
even if it wasn't for him, I
I don't,
bet you felt good saying it. Like, just
yeah.
like, yeah,
Oh,
this made me feel uncomfortable.
I would have felt gross. Yeah, I would have felt gross if I
Yeah,
left and paid and was like, that was fun. Or what a lot of people do, and what I've also been guilty of, is jumping on board and being
yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Because you're like, oh, I don't want to feel like uncool if I don't,
yeah,
whatever. And like, you don't have to hold a fucking rally outside of his gym, or if someone says something,
yeah,
or you can take that person aside. If it's a friend of yours,
yeah,
he's like, oh, I want to mount that girl. Just be like, hey, man, like, this is fucking jujitsu. Like, don't be a fucking creep. And
yeah. Don't
chances
be that
are that,
guy.
yeah. And maybe, by the way, maybe that guy's a fucking creep, or maybe he said it because he heard someone else say it and he thought that's
Yeah,
just how you talk in law. It's Trump, right? It's
yeah,
the locker room talk. It's like,
yeah,
maybe he didn't
yeah,
even mean it. And then you say something to him and he goes, oh, that was fucking dumb. You're right. And then
yeah,
he stops. And now you have someone else where it's like, we shouldn't have such a culture of this, where after Claudia Duval talks about what happened with her and De La
yeah,
Hiva, that everyone's like, yeah, just make so women don't train at the school. It's like, no, no, no. We should all, our first inclination should be, how do we help? How do we listen? How do we hear this out? Blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
You
It's
guys,
like,
you
for
guys
as
know.
long as you don't sexually assault women, for the most part, the women are going to be happy and they're not going to accuse you of sexual assault. For the
Yeah.
most part, again, there are shitty people out there.
Yeah.
Yes, women can lie. Women can definitely, if they have an ulterior motive, for sure. Like, just as like men can do it too. Like, everyone is capable of lying and fulfilling
Being
ulterior
shitty.
motive.
Yeah.
Yes, everyone is capable of doing it, right? Like, I'm not perfect. I'm pretty sure I did something shitty to somebody somewhere and someone doesn't like me. Like,
Yep.
um, do I try to make myself aware of, like, oh yeah, that was probably really shitty. Like, maybe I said something I shouldn't have said, or I was, whatever, judgmental or whatever. I could have treated someone better. And I'm aware of it and I make those changes. Cool. Like, but like, fuck, at the very least, it's just like due diligence. It's just like, you don't have to, like, the women aren't the problem, right? Like, the women aren't the problem. If people are complaining about the sexual assault, or the women, like, it's not the women that are the problem. It's the sexual assault that's the problem. So maybe you should address that.
Let's focus
Not,
on, yeah, let's
yeah.
focus on
Let's
the
focus on what the
sexual
actual problem is.
assaulters. All right,
Yeah.
pal. Well, you were great and righteous and funny and smart. I'm so proud of you, for winning. And what do you want to promote?
Promote mental health.
Yeah, yeah. Fuck that.
Promote mental health.
That's better.
There.
That's better than a Gis sponsor. Be
Yeah.
be
Well,
nice. Be
yeah,
nice to
I,
each
I do love
other
my
and
sponsor. I do love my sponsors though. My sponsors are great. But like, yeah, what do I want to promote? I want to promote health, like mental health. I want to promote healthy boundaries. I want to promote, like,
yes.
I want to promote, like, shit, like, just being a good fucking human being. Like, man, like, we're all fucked up. We all got our issues, but like, man, we are a fucking community. We're not singular people, we can all fucking get through this shit together if we actually learn how to work together and not, be divided about, like, petty shit, like, I don't know, we're just specks of dust in this universe.
Oh, that was
Like,
That was the
You
best.
know?
That was the best fucking ending, motherfucker. Whoever's my next guest, they're gonna look really dumb when they're like, "Want to give a shout out to Show Your Roll?" And it's like, "Oh, dude, listen to what Kristina plugged."
Yeah, I
Way
want to give a
better.
shout out to like late night cries in the shower, you know, when you've had a long hard day
Yep.
or being
Equality.
yeah,
I
quality.
cried, dude. Aubrey Marcus and Kyle Kingsbury invited me to this thing, this like hippie, like fucking thing in Sedona, and there was a moment where it was like a meditation and music and dance, and the sun was setting, and you're supposed to just like not try to dance, but like just like feel and move your body. And I'm like, this is weird, and I'm in my head, and I'm starting to think about how maybe I don't even belong here, and blah blah blah. And literally, Kyle, this giant ex-UFC fighter, comes and he puts his hand on my heart, and I start sobbing. And I'm like, oh, that's what I've been holding in. Okay. And then I started laughing. It was immediately followed by this like almost like blissed out kind of like ecstasy where it's like, oh, okay, right. It's okay to feel the emotions. It's okay to like, do that stuff. But anyway, that was the best fucking
Yeah.
ever. Anyone who promotes their stuff at the end of this show is now garbage compared to you. Good work. I love you very much. I'm very proud of you. And I'll let you know when this is up.
Yay.